Hi everyone, I'm Allie Buckman with the Potomac Bead Company, and I'm going to do this Falling Frost pendant for you today. The Falling Frost pendant is based on a herringbone stitch, and it's using a newer style bead, which is the MiniDuo bead. I'm also going to be using some Potomac crystal rondelles and some teardrops as well. If you need any of the materials to do this Falling Frost pendant, you can look on the left-hand side here. We'll do a little drop down as I list the products with links to purchase them from me online. If you do live near one of our stores, you can look at the details page or the details box kind of right underneath the video here. If you click the little show more button, it'll give you a list that you can take to the store to get all your materials that you would need to do this Falling Frost pendant. This pendant, like I said, is based on a herringbone stitch, and it's going to be using some MiniDuo beads. For the pendant design, I've picked two colors of MiniDuos. Here I have the pastel lilac and the hematite, the jet hematite color, as well as the jet hematite teardrops. For my example that I'm going to be making with you guys, we're going to do the champagne luster MiniDuos, as well as the crystal gold lined MiniDuos. For the pendant, you're going to use 16 of each of your colors of your MiniDuos. If you want to do it all in one color, say to look like a snowflake, you could do it all in one. You would just need 32 total of your MiniDuos. These aren't too big, so they could easily be turned into earrings as well, doing a pendant with a super duo rather than a MiniDuo later. In addition to those two MiniDuo colors, I'm going to be using a teardrop for my outer edge, and that teardrop is in black bronze, so it's a nice kind of goldeny bronze color to go along with my MiniDuos. And then I'm using the crystal champagne color as well in the Potomac crystal rondelles. I'm going to keep some silver tones with it and use the crystal Labrador full 15-0 seed beads. And I have a size 10 beading needle here. On my size 10 beading needle, I have 2 feet of white 0.006 wildfire beading thread. And then at the very top of the pendant, there's a number of different ways to do it. I'll be showing you how to use a wire protector or a wire guard, and then just attaching a jump ring to put it on a simple chain or simple strung necklace. An idea for a necklace for this would be very pretty with just a simple strung line of 15-0 seed beads, creating a chain in itself. In the example piece here, instead of using the Potomac crystals, I did use 2mm fire polished rounds, and they're in the jet amber color. I'm working on a bead mat, and I have a couple tools sitting next to me. I have my wildfire cord cutter or thread burner, and I have a wide jaw pliers to flatten out my thread after I burn it in order to put my needle onto my thread. To start my pendant, I'm going to go with 8 of my inner beads separated by one of my 11-0 seed beads. Again, here in the example, there was a 2mm fire polish round used. I'm going to switch the Potomac rondelles. It's going to make it just a tad bit bigger, but it's not going to change the spacing for anything else. In between each rondelle, I'm going to put a 15-0, just holding the bottom of my thread, and this is going to create the base of the pendant. Once I have all of these on, I'm going to simply tie a knot with my thread and start the herringbone stitch. You do want to make sure as you add your 8 crystals or 8 check glass pieces, you want to put a 15-0 in between each, starting with a crystal and ending with a 15-0. Once I have that, I'm going down towards the end here, and just tying a nice little knot and pulling that into a circle. Once I have the little crystal collection there into a circle, I'm going to start the herringbone by doing my first color, which is that champagne color of the MiniDuo. To start, I'm going to take my needle and thread and sew through one of my first crystals. When I'm coming out of a crystal next to the seed bead, I'm going to add an 11-0, 2 minis, and an 11. Then I'm going to sew through the next crystal. Again, coming out one of my crystals, 15, 2 minis, and a 15. I think I said 11 last time, sorry about that. But we're using all 15 O's for this one. When you're working with it, your beads don't necessarily want to lay right next to one another in that herringbone stitch. Don't worry too much about it, you just want to make sure that you don't have a lot of extra thread showing. Again, I'm coming out a crystal, on goes a 15, 2 minis, and a 15, and I sew through the next crystal. I'm going to continue this the whole way around, adding my 16 minis in place with a 15 O on each side. I've added 7 out of the 8 sets of my MiniDuos, and I'm going to add this 8th set to finish off the pattern of that base row of MiniDuos. To do that, I have my 15, 2 minis, and 15 on. I'm coming out of the last crystal, and I'm going to go into the first crystal that my thread was coming out of. Once I sew into there, I'm also going to sew up through the 15 that was added next to the mini, as well as those 2 first minis. Once I'm there, I'm going to get ready to step up and start my next portion of my MiniDuo bead. So the second row. Here in the example, that's that white lila luster color. I'm going to be using my gold lined crystal. To get to that next row, we're simply going to take our thread that's coming out of the bottom hole of that MiniDuo and go to the top hole. My thread and needle is going to come back towards me, which is going to put the thread on the side of that MiniDuo. It's not going to be shown much because of the colors that I've chosen, but also we're going to be putting beads in between. So if you do have a little bit of an off color, don't worry about it. Once I'm coming out of this bead, I get to start my second row of MiniDuos in that herringbone style. I have 2 beads here from the first row creating a V, and I'm going to do the same thing with the second row. The pattern for the second row is going to be very simple, adding 2 of my crystal gold lined and going through the second bead in that set of V. Once I have those 2 beads in place, I'm going to use a 15-0 to sew into that next set of beads that create a V. Add 2 more minis and sew through the second little portion of the V. Getting from one V to another, add 1 15, sew through the first one, and add 2 more minis. You continue this simple pattern the whole way around this falling frost pendant. Once we have the whole way around, we'll pick up and add our outer edge. I've added my last 2 minis in place, and I just have one 15-0 to add, linking the last V to the first. At that same time, I'm going to go through the bottom hole of the first set of gold lined crystal beads. Just like I did previously to step up, we're going to go from the outer edge of that gold line bead, from the bottom hole to the top hole, having a little bit of thread exposed there at the top. When I pull the snowflake here, or the frost piece here, I want to pull, but I don't necessarily need to pull super tight. If you see a little bit of thread in between, that's okay. You don't want a curling effect to happen. So you want it to be nice and tight that you don't see a lot of thread, but you don't want any curling effect to be going on. In between here, what I'm going to be doing between these V's is I'm going to add my drop bead. In addition to the drop bead, I'm going to create a V with my seed beads connecting to that inner 15-0 that we first put in, going around that last row of that herringbone. I'm coming out of one of my MiniDuos. I'm going to add a drop and go through the second MiniDuo in that V section. With the smaller 2mm bead on the inside, I used 2 beads to connect my herringbone rows. For the larger crystal in the middle, I'm going to use 3/15 to connect to that middle 15. Add 3 more 15s and sew up to the top hole of that gold lined herringbone bead. Once I'm out the gold lined bead, I add a teardrop and sew through the second gold lined bead. Add 3 more 15s and pick up the 15 between the second hole of that champagne luster MiniDuo from the first row. Once your 3 beads are on, pick up 3 more and sew through the next gold lined mini at the top. Add a teardrop, sew through the gold lined mini. This is the effect that you're going to have, is kind of that bursting effect. That's what we want to occur between our pendant here, and I'm just going to continue doing that the whole way around this falling frost pendant. To finish up after adding your 8 drops, what we're going to do is just finish up with our groups of 3. Adding those 3 15s and connecting to the 11 or to the 15 below. And I'm going to step up then to the last super duo or mini duo, going through the mini as well as the teardrop. So this would be the first one that was added, whole way through the next mini, and come out after one of the 15 O's in that first little seed bead V that we created. This is where I'm going to get ready to use my wire protector. You could also simply do a seed bead loop, that's up to you. I'm using a wire protector because I think it would look pretty on an actual chain, and then a jump ring to go with that. You could also use a bail if you wanted to go that route as well. If you haven't used a wire protector is a horseshoe shaped item that has 2 little tubular like areas on one on each side. At the top then it has a domed area for the thread to actually sit inside of. If you're putting something on an ear wire or on an actual wire, it's nice to do this, that way you don't have the thread running right along that chain or that ear wire, or in this case, a jump ring. I'm going to go up the side of the wire protector, also sometimes called a wire guardian, and I'm going to come down the other side here. Once I'm down the other side, I'm going to go through that first 15 that's closest to the mini duos in the next little V of minis. When you pull this, you want to make sure that that thread does go right into that little U channel. That's going to be how we add our wire protector right in place there, and that's where I'm going to actually link onto my pendant. One thing that I thought was nice, a nice idea as I was laying this on my bead mat, is I think I'm going to put that darker drop just coming down right from the center. Here in this side you could do the same thing, drop it down, that's up to you. Because I do want to reinforce this area here, I'm going to use this opportunity to add the drop and then to come back up and to reinforce. To get down to the bottom center here, I'm going to go on the sides of my mini duos, going from the top hole to the bottom hole so that I don't see the thread snaking from one side to the other. Once I have that, I'm going to go through the next mini duo, and this is all in an effort to get my thread to come out right next to that middle rondelle next to and coming out one of the 15s. So I'm just backtracking basically through them and through all the beads. Whenever you have a project that you have to get back to the center or you want to reinforce the clasp, you never want the thread actually showing because that can be an area of weakness. Once I'm out that 15 next to the rondelle, I'm going to go ahead and add my drop in. To do that, I'm just going to use a couple of my 15s, 2 on each side. Sew on the drop, 2 on each side. If you do have a drop that's a little bit larger, sometimes they have just a little bit bigger top, you could use that in here as well. Once I'm through there, I'm going to go through the 15 on the other side of that rondelle. I'm going to mimic how I came down from the previous side by going up the 15 and through the minis. When that gets me back to the top, I'm going to reinforce that little wire guardian. As my thread comes up to the top here, again, you want to make sure that you don't see any thread exposed. So I'm going to go through a collection of the minis. And it's up to you again whether or not you want to add that drop. If you don't want to add the drop, you're just going to sew through the 15s to get back around, so that way you can reinforce your little clasp area. So I'm coming out of that 15 again, back up into that horseshoe shape, protector, down the wire guard on the other side, and back through that 15. Now all I'm going to do is tie off my thread by going through one of the bridge threads here, sewing underneath it, making a loop, and taking my needle back through that loop 2 times. Pull that, and that's going to create a nice secure knot. If you want to and you want to grab some glue, you can glue down your edges. I'm just going to take my burner and simply burn down my edges and get rid of some of my thread here. Because it doesn't have a lot of tension on the beads and we're going to be using it as a pendant, I'm not going to worry about the glue, but that's up to you. But there you have that fun little falling frost pendant. Again, it can be an earring, it can be a pendant, whether or not you want to make it larger or smaller. If you do want to add a jump ring to it so that the chain is not sitting to the side, you're just going to open the jump ring, add it to your wire guard, and close the jump ring up. Simply done. You can see the difference between adding a larger bead in the center versus a smaller bead in the center, and it just makes a nice little focal pendant for you to wear in different colors that you do it in. It may look like a flower versus a snowflake, so keep that in mind for the season that you're in. If you do need any of the materials that are used in either the example or the piece that we made, you can go back to the beginning of the video to get the details on links for that to purchase online from us. Or you can go to underneath the video here again to that details area, show more, and get links there. As always, visit PotomacBeads.com to shop online or to check out where our stores are. We'd love to actually see you in one of our retail locations. And you can also follow us here on YouTube by subscribing to the channel, or on Facebook as well. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone, and have fun making these falling frost pendants.